Morning, everyone. Today's lesson is going to be over Chapter 8 of Animal Farm. If you go to page 98, this is where everything starts off. We can see that the rules are changing literally in Chapter 8. We have a lot of animals thinking back to the rules that were initially created, and according to their memory, they thought that no animal shall kill another animal, and that was something that was established. But even though they think that, they don't bring up this idea to the pigs or dogs. Why? Probably because of the fear that's been instilled in them. I mean, just reflect back to the confessions that had occurred. It could result in their deaths. So anyway, they do a little bit more investigating, actually. They decide they want to go to the barn and read the commandments and see if it says that on them. And they try to get Benjamin to help them out. Now, notice that Benjamin refuses to be involved in this. Remember, he represents the intellectuals. They're the ones that could potentially criticize the government privately, who are truly intelligent and can see what's happening, but they never bothered to take action or do anything about it. So they're his not choosing to be involved. So they actually get Muriel to do the reading for them. And when she reads the commandment on the wall, it says that no animal shall kill another animal, and I put this in italics on my notes, without cause. Okay? We know that that's not how the commandment was originally written, so we know that someone is rewriting them and making additions to these to serve the purposes of the pigs. And we probably assume that animal is Squealer. Okay, so they're trying to change the commandments to fit their needs. So after they read the commandment on the barn, they see that the commandment hasn't been violated, and so clearly there was a good reason for killing the traitors who had leagued themselves with Snowball. So even though they had a memory against that, they choose to go ahead and assume that they were wrong. So they're fooled. They don't see through the cunning of the pigs. I want you to think about how this even applies to our own world. Does it happen? Absolutely. So, maybe reflect on the instances where this has occurred in today's society. We also have Squealer carrying on with his propaganda in this chapter. Ways in which he does this is using facts and statistics to confuse and sort of convince the animals. This is seen on page 99. And of course, the animals see no reason to disbelieve him, especially since they're having troubles remembering how things were happening when Jones was ruling, before the rebellion. So their memories are fading out, and so they have nothing to compare to. This is pretty dangerous, okay? Oftentimes, we use facts and we use statistics and we use research to back up our points, much like Squealer is doing. Yet, as a reader, you got to be careful with these facts and statistics because, numbers can easily be manipulated to prove whatever you want them to prove, okay? You have to closely examine them. And that's something that, you could take away really even outside of this text, all right? Moving forward, we also have Napoleon definitely being no longer one of the animals. He's clearly setting himself apart and he's distinguishing himself as superior. Look, a phrase that I'm going to point out to you from the novel. It says Napoleon was now never spoken of simply as Napoleon. In fact, let me read how he's addressed here. It says they use very emotive titles such as protector or father or friend. Are these true and fitting? Obviously not. Think back to what's happened in chapter 7. Napoleon also seems to receive credit for every achievement and every stroke of good luck that happens on the farm, even though he has nothing to do with probably most of it. Okay, we even have songs and poems written about Napoleon in chapter 8. Again, all part of that propaganda machine. The poem is, wonderfully satirical, of patriotic rhetoric that you see in any country. The poem itself, if you look in chapter 8, uses more emotionally charged titles for Napoleon, makes it seem like, he loves them and he cares for all animals. Some words that I point out, I guess specifically, would be words like comrade, that's used to portray Napoleon as one with the animals and is in the fight with them. He also uses words such as thou and thy, which is similar to what we see in religious texts. It imitates that sense of reverence and awe when talking about Napoleon. And it makes it seem like he is like a god. this just shows you how important diction or word choice is to people, that it really can make a difference on how people view others, okay, or view anything. So the animals, like always, are fooled by this language and this rhetoric because they're not critical thinkers, that they're not educated or intelligent enough to see past this rhetoric. That's one of the main themes of the novel, that the uneducated masses can be taken advantage of by the intellectual elite. So you see this evident here. Okay, we also have some discussion about the dealings with the neighboring farms. This sort of parodies Stalin's dealings with England and Germany during World War II. We've studied satire before. We know that parody is a technique of satire. This entire book is clearly satirical in form. So let's kind of talk about that, shall we? So the description of Napoleon's dealings with his neighbors, Mr. Pilkington and Mr. Frederick, clearly and elaborately parodies Stalin's diplomatic tap dance with Germany and the Allies in the outset of World War II, okay? So just to kind of enlighten you here, we've got Stalin, who was basically faced with this unpleasant choice between the capitalist Allies and the fascist Germans, was also reluctant, to engage in another large war, basically stalled by alternately siding with one country and then went and allied with another. And he used propaganda along the way to sort of drag the populace, so the people he was leading, along with his changing allegiances, I guess I should say. And then, at the last minute, unexpectedly, he signed this non-aggression pact, which was an agreement not to wage war on each other with German leader Adolf Hitler, okay? And this is a lot like what you saw in the book with Napoleon making the surprise move of selling the timber to Mr. Frederick, even though he had intentions of doing it with others. Hitler, okay, in history, actually almost immediately went back on his word. And this is similar to what you saw in the book with Mr. Frederick's forged banknotes. And Hitler decided to invade Russia's western frontier. And eventually, he killed over 25 million Russians and demolished much of the infrastructure that the Soviets had built since the revolution. So, the depiction of the animal's response to Mr. Frederick, if we're going back to the book, his gratuitous destruction of the great windmill, we've got Orwell aptly conveying this tremendous feeling or sense of betrayal and anger that the Russians felt toward Germany during World War II and after World War II. So there's this connection. So that was a huge thing that happened in Chapter 8. Other issues, we saw in Chapter 8, I'm moving on here, we're blamed on Snowball. We've got more confessions happening. We've got Squealer continuing to alter the memory of the animals. This is the new normal, folks. This is an everyday occurrence now. We even have another attack that the humans had waged on the animal farm. Of course, the animals win, and the pigs celebrate that win, even though it's not really a win. In doing that, in their celebration, the pigs break more and more commandments that were originally established. They dress in clothes, which we know was not allowed. They drink alcohol, which again goes against the principles. And, it's just showing us that, remember, everything's been done a little bit at a time. One rule is broken at a time. And this is so the other animals don't notice as much. And this is how they're getting away with disregarding the rules and controlling everyone. We've also got one final thing to discuss in Chapter 8, and this is Squealer being caught red-handed trying to change the rules of alcohol consumption. While the others had a hard time of figuring out what just happened, we've got Benjamin seeming to understand it and say nothing. Okay, this really, really illustrates the level of ignorance on the animal's parts. It was staring them in the face. It was very obviously done, and yet they could not figure out what had just happened. Okay, and it also continues to illustrate the intellectual's lack of participation in standing up for this obvious and blatant injustice that had occurred. Okay, and that's how we conclude Chapter 8. Okay, if you have any questions, just let me know and I'll be sure to get back to you guys. See you later.